the non-Euclidean geometry, and we talk about 13th century, they developed trigonometry, and they were the very first to sign the very common terms known until today called sine and cosine. Even areas that are more complex, like spherical trigonometry and trigonometry of the tangents, they also made contribution to that as well. Actually, some of these areas were totally invented by them. In physics, coming back to what I promised to Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, he's only, we talk about the 11th century, yet many historians of science say that he is the father of the science of optics, that again has been attributed falsely several centuries after him to some Western scientists. And in fact, as if you read in the introduction to history of science, he is very much praised and quoted even to show his scientific mind. He says that in order to do things, we have first of all to make assumptions and then test it, to experiment with it, to measure it, and to review our assumption whether right or wrong. This is exactly the pillars of scientific method. And we're talking 11th century, not the 16th, as attributed to Roger Bacon. This is a clear case of plagiarism. To try to take something after 5 centuries, such and such invented that. The question of compass. The property of magnetism were known, but it was Muslims actually made practical use of that to invent the compass, which was instrumental not only in navigation, but until today even in aviation. So, because again, the development even of the more sophisticated method of direction now actually emerged, was a development from the notion of compass. They investigated hydrostatics as early as the 9th century, improved the use of water wheels, this carrying water from lower part to very simple, workable method. They made tables of specific gravities of liquids and solids. In geography. And geography, of course, was very important for Muslims because they engaged in trade and used to travel a lot, also from all over the world for Hajj. So it's connected with the practice of Islam, but they went beyond that. Everybody in the West, if you ask anyone who landed first in the New World, everybody says, of course, Columbus, Christopher Columbus. This is false on 2 grounds. Ernest Renan, the famous French writer, quotes from a letter that Christopher Columbus wrote to one of his friends, in which he admits quite clearly that he benefited a great deal from the work of Averroes. Averroes is just in adulteration, Ibn Rushd. The work of Ibn Rushd. And actually, it is said that some of his sailors actually were Muslims, and that's how they helped. But I might add a point here also. It is false on another ground also. Some research that was done by several scholars, in fact, from Harvard University and others. There is a Muslim scholar also who did his dissertation on that subject. He's a revert. I don't like the word convert. He's a revert or returnee to Islam. Abdullah Hakim Quick. The book is very interesting. It's a small book, but very interesting. It's called Deeper Roots, in which it is shown in no uncertain terms that Muslims came to the Western world long before Christopher Columbus. Musa Manses from Africa was a king there, and actually it said that he sent a number of ships to the Sea of Darkness, which referred to the Atlantic. And actually there's more than one piece of evidence to show that Muslims came first. And they brought with them actually various plantations and animals that were not known in that part of the world, to show that indeed it was there before Columbus. Anyway, those who are interested, the evidence is quite available. One thing that has double meaning is that Al-Khalifa al-Ma'mun measured or made an estimate. So he was a Khalifa and he was also a geographer. He estimated the circumference of the earth and came up with the figure of 24,000 miles. And if any of you is in that field, you know that this is only a few hundred miles off the most sophisticated modern means of measuring the circumference of the earth. So that's one, in terms of how early the Muslims discovered that. But what is more fascinating, that we talk about like the 8th century, and somebody speaking about the earth as spherical in shape. That piece of information was not known in Europe until so many centuries later. Remember the difficulty that some scientists have with religious authorities when they said the earth is not flat, as some clergy believed it to be, several centuries before. And by the way, may I add also a remark here. We're not saying that each and every invention by Muslim or others was directly or specifically inspired by a specific ayah on the Quran on this. But this could be a case in question that one would be safe to assume that he was inspired by the Quran. There are several ayahs in the Quran that show that the earth is not really flat. Okay? يولج الليل في النهار ويولج, Allah merges the day into the night and merges the night into the day and night and night and day. You can't imagine merging if the earth is flat, so the sun comes from one side, it is all day, then sunset and go to sleep, everything is dark. Merging means there is gradual. When the Quran speaks also, رب المشارق ورب المغارب, not only one east or west or two, then depending on the change in the poles of the earth that some scientists are probably speculating about, but mashariq, many easts and west. You can't imagine having different points, numerous points of sunrise and sunset on a spherical, except if you have spherical shape itself. Anyway, there are lots of evidence. This is a topic by itself, but it could possibly be inspired by reading the Quran. There have been a number of very famous geographers. One was Al-Idrisi, who also described the earth as spherical. It took still the 10th century before Europe even came to accept that. Later in the 10th century, Al-Mas'udi has encyclopedic work on geography. Al-Yaqubi in his famous Mu'jam al-Bildan in the 12th century, adding, the various major cities and their position on the earth. Even mathematical geography was introduced by Muslim geographers as early as the 13th century by Al-Marakishi. In agriculture, Al-Awwam, and by the way, it's very interesting to notice here the connection between acts of worship and discovery. Al-Awwam used to travel for a long period of time to go to Hajj, more than the time needed, even for walking, going, taking it easy. On his way to Hajj, he stops in every place and study various plantations. He was able to describe actually close to 600 plants and how to cultivate various fruits. And that is again 12th century still. They improved irrigation, the use of organic fertilizers, improved the breeds of cattle, introduced many luscious fruit that the West enjoy today. And they're indebted for that deliciousness to Muslims. The introduction of peaches, apricots, cotton, rice, banana, and sugar. You notice even the word sugar, sukkar, rice, ruz, cotton. The origin is all Arabic. Some even say that bananas is probably from banan. You see how the banan looks like, banana shaped like banan. Okay. And the area of industry, that shows that they were practically minded, not just doing basic theoretical research. We find a great deal of advances in the fabric manufacturing, whether silk, cotton or wool, the leather industry, tanning, manufacturing of glass and steel. Glass they attribute again several centuries to other. Glass, steel, drugs, perfumes, paper that made revolution in the area of knowledge.